Good afternoon, and thank you all for attending, and for many of you for participating in the 2022 UNC Policy Brief Competition. This afternoon's event is part of our first annual Diplomacy Week, which is a week dedicated to exploring diplomacy through firsthand experiences. Firsthand experiences like our speaker last night, who served as a diplomat for 33 years, and today featuring Carolina's own outstanding students and alumni, the stars of today's program. I'm so excited about this program. We in the Office of the Vice Provost for Global Affairs, and I am the Vice Provost for Global Affairs, Barbara Stephenson, have created events like Diplomacy Week and our year-long series, Diplomatic Discussions, to bring top foreign affairs practitioners to Carolina to engage with students. Diplomacy Week is part of UNC's growing diplomacy initiative, which I hope will be my signature program as Vice Provost for Global Affairs. I can see after 34 years as an American diplomat, and having been here for several years, that UNC has all the makings of a top-tier producer of the next generation of global leaders. You guys are doing exactly what we wanted the skill set to be that you get from this. So students, do not underestimate the value of an opportunity like this one. You've all researched real challenges and grappled with the same complexities that policy makers and diplomats around the world are grappling with and debating. The knowledge that you've gained and the skills that you've sharpened in critical analysis, concise and compelling writing, and creative problem solving will equip you, the next generation of global leaders. And I'm just telling you, my generation is counting on you guys to be the next generation of global leaders to address the grand challenges of our time, as UNC's mission statement puts it. This year, we are thrilled to have received 16 submissions that were submitted by individuals and teams for a total of 28 students. And none of this would have been possible without the support of our faculty. And indeed, the idea to hold this policy brief competition and to make it the signature event of something called Diplomacy Week, that actually came from the faculty in the roundtable that supports the Diplomacy Initiative. I'm just so grateful for the partnership. Some of the stars of that roundtable are the faculty who incorporated the policy brief into their courses. Bob Jenkins, teaching transatlantic security from Brussels and London. You guys all pay attention. It's a wonderful study abroad opportunity. Erin Whitaker's introduction to peace and security studies. Tricia Sullivan and her course, Global Policy Issues. And Navin Bapat, who taught terrorism and international peace, and Ted Linebaugh with his course, Empire and Diplomacy. Thank you all for playing not only a critical role in this competition, but for being reliable and active sounding board and a font of just great ideas as we continue to develop and refine the components of the Diplomacy Initiative. I also want to thank our stellar panel of alumni judges. Our three judges, and one of them got COVID and couldn't come. But our three judges graciously accepted our invitation to read the policy briefs and ensure that students receive valuable feedback from people who are real policymakers out in the real world, our alumni, and that their briefs were fairly critiqued across 7 different components: executive summary, introduction, methodology, results and conclusions, implications and recommendations, references or resources, and the visual element and flow. And on a personal note, I want to say that seeing our judges' joy at being back on campus and hearing them relive what they loved most about their time at Carolina has lifted my spirits immeasurably and reminded me how lucky we all are to be part of this great global public research university. Please allow me to introduce our judges. Jennifer Davis is a career Foreign Service officer who is currently completing a Council on Foreign Relations fellowship at Georgetown University and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and concurrently has just begun as senior advisor to U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield. She was meeting with the UN Secretary General yesterday, right before she flew down to join us. We enjoyed being regaled about that at dinner. I asked her to share it. Otherwise, it was just all in a day's work for Jennifer Davis. Previously, Jennifer has served as the U.S. Consul General in Istanbul, executive assistant to U.S. Secretaries of State Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, and Special Assistant to Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. Her overseas tours include Colombia, Brussels, where she served at the U.S. mission to NATO, and Mexico City, where she was Special Assistant to the Ambassador. Jennifer received both a bachelor's with distinction and a JD with honors from Carolina.
Go Heels!
And Kate Hewitt is an experienced national security professional with a background in policy, research, project management, and public affairs. Kate is currently a public affairs specialist and spokeswoman for the National Nuclear Security Administration. And next month, she will start at the Department of Defense in the really important office, OSD Policy, as lead and advisor on multilateral arms control and nonproliferation. Previously, she is like a font of information about how to get all these internships after you graduate, so you want to definitely listen to her. Previously, she was a Herbert Scoville Jr. Peace Fellow and research assistant with the Brookings Institution's Foreign Policy Program, focused on nuclear security and strategy. Kate served in Peace Corps Moldova and held a nuclear technology and policy internship with Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Kate is a CSIS Project on Nuclear Issues Mid-Career Cadre Fellow. She also received the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists Reeser Award, a fellowship at N-Square, and a Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship to study Farsi. She holds a dual bachelor's in political science and philosophy from Gonzaga University and a master's in global study from UNC Chapel Hill. Welcome, Kate. And lastly, Erin O'Connor Menthorn is unfortunately unable to be with us in Chapel Hill, but will join us on Zoom shortly for the alumni panel. Erin is the Senior Director of Government Affairs at Resilience, a next generation manufacturing and technology company for complex medicines. Before joining Resilience, Erin was a policy director within Raytheon Technologies' Global Government Relations Organization. Prior to this position, she served as a career member of the Foreign Service at the U.S. Department of State. During her near decade of service, her assignments included serving as Chief of Staff to the Special Presidential Envoy for the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS, as well as roles within the Bureau of Consular Affairs, the African Affairs Bureau, Office of East Africa, and overseas at U.S. missions in Beirut and in London, where she and I served together. Erin received a master's degree in political science from Carolina through the Transatlantic Master's Program, and she received her bachelor's degree in political science and history from Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. Now it is my privilege to hand things off to Kate and Jennifer, who will share some reflections about this year's submissions, recognize our finalists, and announce the winners. Thank you both.
Well, hello, colleagues and students. It's wonderful to be with you today. Kate and I were just talking about what it's like to be back in Chapel Hill, and it's hard to put in words what it's like to see the azaleas blooming around. Sorry, I just lost my mic around the old well, and I'll turn it over to Kate while I fix my mic.
Yeah, no, it's so great to be back. Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here. So I think we'll just jump right in. First of all, you guys did a great job. It was incredible reading the policy briefs. I'm extremely impressed. As somebody who reads a lot of policy briefs day in and day out to do my job, you know, I can tell you it's extremely important to learn how to do one of those well, and it will serve you well in your future careers. So thank you for allowing me to read them and for, I don't know, going out of your way to write them. I understand you're all very busy. Just a couple of points that I really wanted to hit home. Things that are really important when you're writing them for your principals. You always want to think, you know, what is the most succinct way to write about something? What is the important information that you need to know? Jen's going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm very I think I do well when something is clean, crisp, and visually stimulating. So some of these they were just so easy to read, which you might not think that that's that big of a deal, but the formatting should be right. Your fonts should be well. It should, you know, put them in the columns, add a little header up top, make them look fancy. add the pops of color. I love that. You know, like those are little things that sort of do set you apart. So do those things. And I some of you did them very well. So thank you for that. The one thing I really do want to mention, when you work in government, and you're writing a policy brief, you need to pay very close attention to the tone and the language that you use. They should be as bipartisan or nonpartisan as possible. So those are just, when you're writing at any point, really anything that you write, you should try to incorporate those things. But you know, that's just one nitpicky thing I think to pay attention to. But no, they were incredible, and thank you for having me.
And now I have my mic back, and I will not throw it across the floor again. I wanted to just add a few general thoughts as well. The first is that really succinct briefs are what policymakers are looking for. And I can just tell you that, and Ambassador Stephenson would agree, I'm sure, that you're busy, you have something every 30 minutes, and you have 2 minutes to read something before you have to go into a meeting and make a decision or convince an interlocutor. So you need every word to count. So you want anything you write to be succinct. And I often like to say, if I've written something long, I'm so sorry I didn't have time to write something that's short. Because it takes time to make something short and concise and well written. But take that time for your boss. And then that leads me to the next suggestion I would give, is that if you're making a policy recommendation to someone who's going to go into a meeting, think about what you would want to know as you're sitting in that chair, and give that person those brilliant ideas about how to solve the problem. Which brings me to my third point, which is, and I find this very often in government, we do something called admire the problem, which means we write long papers about how complicated a problem is, but we're very reticent to offer solutions. And that's why we're in government, is to find those solutions. And the papers that we found most powerful were the ones that had the courage to put forward some new and novel ideas about how to solve the problem, which is one of the most important things you're going to want to do in government work. So those are broad thoughts about what we thought as we read these papers. And I just want to echo Kate. I'm teaching right now at Georgetown. And so I read a lot of student papers, and I just want to tell you, I know my heart is Carolina blue, as is my blood, but I was so proud to read the brilliant work that you all put through. And I'll have a funny story to tell you about the winning paper. Really extraordinary work that you all put into these papers, and it was a joy to read them. So
without further ado, we have 5 finalists and 1 winner. So we are going to go through those one by one. The first finalist is the incidence of child marriage as a barrier to female education. So that was from Tricia Sullivan's Policy 110 class, and it was Sydney Simpson Voss. Might butcher these, I'm so sorry. Sarah Rajani and Josephine Davis. So there were a couple of things I loved about it. First of all, visual. I'm very into the color, so thank you for that. I think it's very important that you're succinct, 1-page briefs, you know, 2-page, 3-page, like as short as you can make them to get all the information across is really important. But also, I was just thinking, if somebody had put this on my desk and I was having a really bad day, how nice it would have been to read this, especially about something that's pretty depressing. So thank you for that. Anyways, the topic that you picked, I thought was fantastic as well. We had sort of a slew of different things, and this one really stood out to me. So I appreciate you being willing to sort of take a risk on that as well. The paper was very well organized. It was like clearly thought out. I loved the table of contents. You had a really good breakdown. And I think the thing I particularly enjoyed the most was that you offered stories, which is not something you typically get in a policy brief, but given the subject matter of this, it did really improve the overall brief. I would have been delighted to see that if I was reading a paper like that. And then you broke down your resources by nation, which I also thought was really creative and interesting. So congratulations, you guys. It was great.
So our next finalist.
That you're welcome to come.
Oh,
up,
yeah, let's give the award.
and just share brief comments on why you picked this topic or any takeaways that you have, and present you with your certificates.
Come on up. We can all applaud you.
Yeah.
Congratulations, lady. Excellent work. Excellent work.
Yeah, great job. Great job. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah, so I think we really just wanted to focus primarily on countries in Africa with the worst rates of child marriage. And we wanted to kind of focus on education as like an umbrella topic, but we found that child marriage was like one of the main obstacles that a lot of women and girls face. And so we ended up choosing Tanzania, Malawi, and South Sudan, where childhood marriage statistics were specifically concerning. And there appeared to be a slew of administrative, governmental, and cultural barriers that prevent child marriage laws from actually being effective. And so this prompted our group to really stop and ask, like, what factors specifically played a role in upholding the institution of child marriage and ultimately barring women and girls from receiving a qualification. And so through our research, there seemed to be consistent patterns when it came to a few key areas. So administrative red tape, which stigmatized women and girls that had been or were pregnant or had been married in the past, which forced them to drop out of school or prevented their reentry. And then also, secondly, a lack of community dialogue, which offered education as a viable path to economic stability and self-sufficiency for women, as opposed to economic security being provided through dowries paid to husbands' families. And then also just a misunderstanding of the costs and benefits of investing in female education. And then finally, just a lack of education around sexual and reproductive health and contraceptive use, which definitely feeds into the issue of so many girls being absent from school, since we do know having so many pregnancies does place a burden on female health. So we wanted to focus our policy areas around those areas of concern. We saw a lot of beneficial work already being done in these countries with grassroots organizations. So we wanted to make sure our policy objectives really focused on partnering with these existing grassroots organizations as opposed to top-down methods that don't necessarily understand communities.
Yeah, somebody just about covered it there. But I'll just like I'll give two things that I think I learned doing the project. I would say one is when we started, I sort of had this idea that we needed to have a really specific focus going in. But actually, we just sort of started with this idea of, as women in education, we're being educated. I think we were interested in this educational inequality in countries. And then we sort of started to research it, and the problems became pretty obvious in the research. So I think it was nice to start from maybe a more broad place and then doing some research and really finding out what was important to focus on from there. And then also, I really enjoyed seeing things that were already going on and just really ways to sort of further policy that was already working. Or also, one of my favorite things was this sort of term Ubuntu, which is like a South African. It's a community term for coming together, bringing people together, and that was something I knew nothing about. And it was really interesting, fun to research, and to include things like that in our project felt kind of novel. And cool, I learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah,
Did you wanna add
I
anything?
think they basically covered it. I think it was also really interesting. We got to read academic sources from different places, learn about some like local knowledge, which was a big part of the project, was like seeing sources from non-US or North American sources. So I think that was good, and also just being able to work with other people in our class to share ideas. That was super helpful. We read other people's briefs, and they read ours and gave feedback on that. So I think just like working together in a class like this, like you would in the real world.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And if I could just share, one of the things that was so interesting to me is that you picked such a impressive array of topics to talk about, really hard problems, the Israeli-Palestinian issue, China. And one thing we loved about your paper is that it focused on how to be of service to vulnerable populations, which is one of the things that really draws people into government service, is how you can make the lives of everyday people around the world better. And we loved that emphasis on women and children. So beautiful paper. Okay, our next finalist is Isaiah Jackson, and he wrote a paper on One Belt, One Road. Isaiah, where are you? Yay, great. Let me talk about your paper for a second, and then I'm gonna ask you to come up. This was an incredibly well done paper, and someone in government today could have written it. It is very thoughtful. It's focused on what is truly a challenge to the United States. We've now entered into a period of great strategic competition with Russia and China. And China's One Belt, One Road is expansive as it reaches out to the global south, and we're trying to compete. And what I loved about your paper is that you provided 3 really concrete ways that we could be proactive in reaching out to other countries in using better public diplomacy, which is something I'm very passionate about. We need to talk about what we're doing and why our development projects have value, and why they're not intended to take the resources of a nation, but to invest in that nation. And I think you captured that policy dilemma and then how the United States can compete and succeed and thrive very well. So it was such a well-written brief. We were very impressed with it, and I commend you on your excellent work. Oh, they have them. Great. Yes.
There was a Tar Heel at the bottom, right?
Well, and there was a Tar Heel at the bottom. That was very impactful to me. Yes.
Yeah, well, first, I'm just super grateful to be here. So thank you guys for having this. That's really cool. I'm going to be a little more brief. You guys were super well spoken. I won't meet that standard. I'm just going to talk about why I did it. So I chose that topic because I feel like it's just a super dangerous idea and program. I feel like it's dangerous to the security interests of the U.S. In the developing world. And I feel like the expansion of the sphere of influence of China, especially in the developing nations, is just going to be a roadblock to the spread of democracy and the safeguarding of human rights in those areas. If I had to take one key takeaway, it's just the amount of times I had read an article and then read a newer article and had to change what I thought. And just the fact that timely intelligence and efficient information gathering is so vital in writing these policy briefs and making accurate policy recommendations. So thank you guys.
Great job, Isaiah. Okay, I think I have the next one as well. Yes, okay. So the next finalist was the Information Ecosphere in Crisis, Hannah Elkins. Hannah, are you with us? Hannah. Congratulations on an excellent paper. I asked if I could talk about this one because I've spent the year teaching about disinformation at Georgetown. And it is a matter of extraordinary passion for me because I feel like it is undermining American foreign policy abroad. It is undermining our democracy, and we have been far too reticent to think about creative ways of addressing and combating it. And I loved, as we said, the importance of a policy brief is that you provide solutions. And I am teaching a graduate course at Georgetown right now, and we have graduate students who are about to graduate writing a strategy, and their recommendations are the same ones that you offered. They're about media literacy programs overseas, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and how to treat social media platforms. I know that you talked about deep fakes and takedowns, and it was just a policy-rich paper with some really great ideas about how to deal with a very complex problem. So again, I commend you and congratulations, and come on up. And well done, Professor. Congratulations.
Okay, hi, I'm Hannah. And so I think the main reason I chose to write about this for my brief was it's kind of been a recurring theme that we've discussed in PWAD 250, especially regarding the recent war in Ukraine. I think it's really important to trust the information that you're receiving and know that you can trust it. And I do think now we're kind of at a point where technology moves faster than we do. And I think it's important to have proactive instead of reactive policies on that. So that's kind of why I wanted to focus on this, because I do believe it impacts us here, like in the United States, but also abroad and through basically every other channel, because knowledge and information is power. So I did that. And I guess a takeaway for me would be really focusing in on refining my writing to be clear and concise. I'm a PWAD and English major, so sometimes I struggle between writing like flowy, eloquent, lots of words, but also, knowing the importance of being concise, to the point, and getting the message across. So it definitely helped me writing in that way. And thank you for having me.
Okay, one of our next finalists is German Energy Security in the Changing World Order, written by Kaylee Murray, Claire Perry, and Sam. I'm going to mispronounce your last name. Sam, are you here? Sam. Wonderful. And Sam, congratulations. You all wrote an extraordinary paper, and what I liked most about it is, it's very timely as we consider energy independence for Europe in the middle of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Germany's independence from Russian gas and oil is incredibly important. And so we just thought this was a very creative approach for Germany to consider ways of making itself more energy independent. It's something that the German government is struggling with right now. So I really appreciated your very fresh ideas at ways that they can ensure that they are independent from Russia and can make good policy choices thanks to that energy independence. So bravo.
Thank you so much. Can y'all hear us?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I'm Claire Perry, and this is my groupmate, Kaylee Murray. And unfortunately, Sam Tenjis could not make it today, but we're so grateful to be here. And we'd like to thank the judges, the Global Studies team, Ambassador Stephenson, and our professor, Dr. Jenkins, with the Brussels and London Birch Honors Research Seminar. That's where we did this policy brief, and we have learned so much about just transatlantic relations, and this is especially pressing in the Ukraine crisis. And one aspect of that crisis that we have learned about is Europe's energy dependence on Russia, specifically in this case, Germany. And that's why we felt that it was an important topic to address. And in addressing that topic, we felt it pertinent to split our solutions up into categories just by immediacy, because you can't build the infrastructure to have, a completely renewable energy economy in a couple months or even a year. That takes time. So my focus was on the reduction of energy consumption, and that was the first part of our recommendations. So yeah, we had a lot of different solutions for that, and Kaylee can talk about the nuclear aspect as well.
We focused on nuclear and, of course, the renewable energy resources that they are currently working towards. Germany has had a pretty comprehensive energy plan up until this point, but with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it has kind of had a wrench thrown into it. So while we have been in Europe and have been talking to people, we went to Berlin and talked to a couple of people, mainly one who worked with the parliament. So we got to kind of talk to people firsthand who were dealing with these issues. And obviously German energy independence, or you could say less dependence on Russian energy, is a very big issue. Everyone needs energy. And so that's kind of why we chose this topic. I dealt with nuclear energy. It's a kind of a touchy subject in Germany. And so what I think I learned most from this whole experience was just knowing your audience and knowing what is feasible to recommend to them, knowing what they will or they can do with nuclear energy specifically. There's just not a lot of love for nuclear energy in Germany. And so you can't really recommend that they build all new nuclear structures. Obviously, that would take time, and there is not really the political will for that. So just knowing what you can recommend to them, instead just recommend that they prolong their deactivation of it, recommending to them more feasible ways that won't, harm their climate change goals that they have for the future.
Right. And I think one thing that we as a group ran upon as a challenge is that this specific scenario is evolving every day. Like, we would write part of the policy brief and then we'd be like, they put into place what we wanted to write in the policy brief, so now we have to change it. So yeah, it was just a really exciting time to be covering this topic, and we felt it very important. And as this is very publicly evolving in the next couple of months and possibly even years, as the Ukraine crisis continues, we are excited to see if any of these recommendations might be put into place. So thank you so much again to the judges and the Global Studies team. And thank you for the feedback. We appreciate it.
Bravo.
Okay, and our last finalist was the United States Climate Future by Max Adair, Carly Larson, and Sky Romanowski, who I think are also part of that Bob Jenkins class. So what I extremely liked about this paper, the most, I think, well, there were lots of good things about this paper. The executive statement made it very clear right up front what I needed to know, what you were, like one paragraph of exactly what you were going to talk about, and you need that. And then you gave 3 fantastic options. I felt like all things that are currently being talked about when it comes to climate, so all very relevant. You clearly did your research. You picked 3 things that were very salient. And then, just as Jen said, it's tricky sometimes to offer your personal opinion and your recommendation on what you're doing, and really backing it up and saying, like, I know that this is what we should be doing. And I felt like this paper did the best of all of the policy briefs of offering one very sound recommendation with very, very solid evidence to back up why you felt that way. Also, it was written in plain English, which is extremely important when you're reading a policy brief. So thank you very much for writing. It was fantastic. And congratulations.
Thanks, guys. I'm Carly Larson.
I'm Sky.
And Max Adair is he's watching, but he couldn't be here today. And we basically chose climate change, obviously, because of the pressing global issue that it is. And considering the recent UN Security Council discussing it possibly being a security threat and the overall global initiative to work towards climate action, we thought that taking a US perspective was extremely pertinent, and it's pertinent to us as young Americans. It's really applicable and we feel passionate about it. And also regarding the fact that the United States often has changes in their perspective about what to do with climate change, especially like with the previous President Trump withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. We thought that a policy brief about climate change in the US was necessary to kind of realign the United States as a global actor and leader in climate change. And
so another reason why we did it was when we were in Brussels with Dr. Jenkins in the class, we were briefed by the European Commission on the European plans and aspirations for climate policy, which included cutting carbon emissions to 55% of 1990 levels and becoming a carbon neutral continent by 2050. And given the state of climate policy in the United States, I found that we found that very uplifting. We were inspired to picture a brighter future for our own home country.
Yeah, and it was super cool to be able to ask actual important people who knew what was going on and ask them in person our questions. Like, I came into that meeting and we had ideas of what to ask. So some of the stuff that we talked about in our policy brief, we actually had asked like people in the European Commission on their advice and like what they think and stuff like that. So it was really cool. And then a major takeaway with this assignment is how difficult it is to recommend United States domestic policy, considering you have to really think about the feasibility of what's going to be passed in legislation. So that's why we took it in the direction of following President Biden's current climate action task force of like creating all these experts to advise on executive orders, and then that's how we advised it, because it's really hard to, we saw with like the Green New Deal and stuff like that, it's really difficult to make anything happen in legislation with the divide in American politics. So that's a big thing that we learned. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And that was a really helpful point, is feasibility of a strategy. And always when you write a strategy or a policy paper, take some time to think about the feasibility of your solutions. If it requires legislation, do you have the Congress that you need to pass that legislation? If not, what are the ways of achieving that? And you always want to test your challenges and your risks and ask yourself those questions before you turn your policy paper over to your boss.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I also forgot to mention that they added key terms throughout with definitions, which if you don't know about an issue is extremely helpful. So thank you for that and great job. Okay, our winner. We are so excited about this paper. I think we all like geeked out so hard when we were reading it. So our winner is The Future of NATO Cybersecurity Training, the Cyber Warfare Games, by Cordelia Gilligan, Chayoung Oh, Gabrielle Tedder, and Paola Andro, which I think are also in the Jenkins class. I will mostly let Jen talk about this paper, but I was blown away. I read it, it was fascinating. I didn't know that much about it, but I thought that you did an incredible job of being succinct in your executive summary. It's beautiful. It's maybe the most beautiful policy brief I've ever read in my life. And so the only other question that I have is if you can email me your resumes, because I'm very interested in following your career and employing you. So thank you very much.
So I want to take a minute and tell you a funny story about this paper. I knew I had a plane trip, so I wanted to print a few papers so that I could read them on the trip. So I printed them at our mission to the UN, and I walked over to the printer and I picked up my papers, and then I saw this one and I pulled it out and I thought someone printed an actual NATO document in our office and this must be an actual NATO document and these are my papers. And then I went back to it. I walked away from the printer and then I looked on my computer and I said, oh my gosh, that's an actual paper. As a diplomat who served at NATO, I can tell you that one of the things that surprised me is that the paper is written the way that the international staff at NATO would write a policy brief. It thinks through in these very concise ways what the problem is and how to resolve it. It's about cyber warfare games and how to be prepared for cyber attacks. And for NATO, its new mission really, it's always been a defensive military organization, but it thinks much more about cyber attacks and hybrid warfare, including disinformation now. And so thinking about how Russian cyber attacks make us less resilient, more vulnerable is not only really pressing, but then the solutions you had to make us, to prepare NATO to combat a cyber attack were just really, they were so succinct and directed. Again, they had the feel of an actual policy brief. So really a huge amount of applause and appreciation for this paper. It was just extraordinary. We don't have them overseas, is that correct?
Hi.
Yay!
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for your kind words. I guess addressing why this topic, I was just gonna walk everyone through my group's thought process, because we found this the most challenging part of the process, deciding on what specific issue to address. Our group knew that we wanted to focus on cybersecurity. And so the next logical step for us was finding an audience. And having spent a good portion of our time abroad in our classes, in our program, focusing and discussing on NATO, its structure, its role, we decided that that would be our best bet. And obviously we needed an organization first that we could research and find gaps in their policy to address in this brief, because if there are no gaps to address, there is no need for a policy brief. And so Cordelia in our group really came through in finding a few articles about cyber warfare games. And when we delved into this a bit deeper, we found that these games that they hold every year for the past, I believe, at least a decade or so, have multiple flaws and setbacks that hadn't yet been addressed. And with the world shifting rapidly in terms of technology, we thought it very relevant and somewhat trendy. Cyber warfare games sound quite cool to have this as a topic. In terms of takeaways, sorry, I have notes I wrote. Big picture wise, it was a little surprising to see this big of a policy gap in an organization as formidable as NATO. We think it goes to show why these briefs are needed, especially in providing fresh perspectives. Ironically, one of the key recommendations in our brief was to bring in independent hackers so as to combat groupthink, which is a risk in any group setting, whether it be at the university level or at the international organization level. And more specific to the topic of cybersecurity and war games, it was interesting to learn how every single political decision can spur cyber attacks in this day and age. Most notably, the Chinese hacks of NATO countries increasing dramatically after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but also in more recent instances like Finland, whose government websites were attacked amid discussions about joining NATO. And funnily enough, NATO's annual cyber war games for this year just kicked off on April 18th, which I thought was a great intersection with our policy brief and its relevance. So thank you.
Brilliant work. Well, we should turn it over to the esteemed Ambassador Stephenson to take us home. Yes. Again, though, brilliant work. So impressed by all of you.
I'll be honest, I go around all the time bragging about Carolina students and saying I've taught students at Georgetown and George Washington, and our students at Carolina are just actually so much better. And you know, you always hope you're not just drinking your own Kool-Aid. I have to say, you guys have exceeded my wildest expectations, and I had such high expectations for this, but that was a joy to listen to you all present these things. They were really, really high quality. And I loved meeting earlier with the judges to really just talk about how genuinely they enjoyed actually doing this. One of the things we were concerned about building this was, will we give the judges too much to do and we would overwhelm them? Right? That was not a problem. People really, really enjoyed reading the policy briefs. So heartfelt thanks to all of you students who participated in this and you turned these in. Really great work. thank you, professors who saw this through and taught your classes and brought them to this point. Students, a round of applause for your professors, please. And I do want to thank our judges again for their time today and throughout the process. The joy that they brought to this work and the expertise they brought, the guidance they gave about what makes a great policy brief, and how to be concise and make it visually appealing and get those clear options and not just admire the problem. This is said all the time by policy leaders in the State Department, is that Foreign Service officers will write you 20 pages of admiring all the complexities of the problem and what am I supposed to do about it? And you guys got right to it and proposed solutions. So it was terrific. What's going to happen next is we're going to ask all the semifinalists to come on up to the stage too, so we can pick up your certificates. And that's everyone who participated and got to this level, because your professors only sent the top briefs forward. We want to take a group photo, and then we're going to take a break for about 45 minutes. So we have refreshments in the atrium. And then at 5, we'll come back in and we'll actually have a panel discussion with our alumni about really careers in making these kind of policy decisions. So semifinalists, come back up. We want everybody who participated come up so we can get a group photo. Aaron, you come up as well. Navin, you come up. The professors, Adi, come on up. We want a group photo of everyone who participated, and then we'll take a break and go get some refreshments. So come on.